This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for the Intentionality Gurus with Candace Pollock. Today's title is What is Your Soul Force? And I think it's going to be interesting because one of the things that I always say at the beginning of this, we do not plan our conversation or the topic of the show. And when I read the blurb that Candace sent this morning, it was like, I really need this morning. So give us a hint where we're going to go.
Well, we're going to go wherever we go. And the idea is our soul force is something that's percolating inside of us, whether we're consciously aware of it or not, or intentional around it, I should say. And the conversation today, and I think this will probably lead into some other conversations, is about how to get in more direct touch with our soul force and help it grow. So I don't know if that sheds any light on the topic at all, but we'll explore. All right.
Okay.
Game. All right. So the phrase soul force comes from Brian Johnson, and he was a founder of Optimize, which was a group that cultivated ancient philosophy and modern science, and he would craft these summaries of various things and so on. And then ultimately he founded Heroic, which is another organization of public benefit corporation, basically doing the same thing, just in a different manifestation. And so his idea is he went into an emotional slump early in his career after leaving law school, and he basically just started studying ancient philosophy, and he found there was a lot of merit in it in terms of what he was dealing with in his current life. And then over time he started collecting more and more of these things, and then was sharing these things with others. And I was one of the people that enjoyed all of his work. And one of the principles that he talks about is that, from ancient philosophy, is that humans have this manifest need to grow towards their potential. So Maslow says that's self-actualization. Maslow was a more current psychologist who created Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At first, we have to take care of our, physical needs, food, water, shelter, those kinds of things. Then we can move up to things that have to do with esteem and, other gratification, and then keep moving up. And at the tippy top of the pyramid is self-actualization. And while we have a lot of conversations around self-actualization, there isn't always a lot of understanding about how to cultivate more of that in our life, more or less as a compass point, our North Star. Right? Sound like understandable so far?
Yes, absolutely.
So push back if I'm getting a little wet.
No, you're fine.
All right. So in another way of phrasing it is, it's our individual best self. So we're not all going to have the same best self and feel that we're at our highest manifestation. And many of us don't get there because we let self-limiting beliefs get in the way, and maybe there's some cultural forces that inhibit certain things. It doesn't mean you have to win every race or be perfect. It does rely on virtue, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be holier than thou. All right.
Makes
So
sense.
everybody has to pick their own level and direction and so on. So, and the idea is that happiness is part of this. We won't be truly happy or have that deep sense of happiness or fulfillment unless we arrive at this. There will always be this, underlying gnawing need. And some of it can be from dysfunctional thought habits, and some of it can be from beneficial thought habits. So the idea with the philosophers, going back to Aristotle, was to pick the virtues that we want to live by and embody those in our daily activities, and embody it meaning literally mind, body, and spirit, and then just practice that as much as we can. Sean Achor was a professor of happiness at Harvard University, and this hysterical TED Talk, just an adorable TED Talk. But he defines happiness as the joy you feel growing towards your potential. So how does that resonate for you? Can you pick some
Well,
time?
well, I think so many of us, if we think that we've hit the pinnacle, that sometimes is like it's exciting, but it's also disappointing because it's like, well, now what? But I think the steps getting there are the fun parts. That hey, I see this change that has happened, and I like it, or I see this change that has happened, and I'm not quite happy with it. So, what can I do to to move forward and change it? It's almost like going on a diet, like those first couple pounds, hey, you're happy, even though you haven't reached your goal. And then, the next, couple pounds you lose, you may not be quite as excited about because it's not as significant. But once you hit your goal, sometimes it's anticlimactic.
Yeah, and there's a lot of science behind that. And Dan Sullivan is own strategic coach, and he talks about the gap. And the gap is the distance we have between where we are and our goal. And he talks about, this is just my, paraphrasing of it, basically a phenomena that occurs as we approach it, our goal then moves. We're not satisfied with that goal. And so we're constantly living in that gap between where we are and where we think we should be or want to be. And if we look at where we came from to where we are, that would give us more fulfillment in terms of working towards the goal. And that kind of reinforces indirectly the sense behind the soul force and being our best and highest self, that it's something that we do. It's not a place we arrive at. And so in our daily practices, and I had a little issue with one of the national carriers of packages and so on, and I was fussing about that, and I was not my best self. My thoughts definitely were not kind and might have been a little violent, those kinds of things, just for a short time. But I was able to pull myself back and get, centered again, in order to not start beating myself up about that. So one of the things that I love in Brian's work is the idea that we can adopt these separate identities. Basically, the idea that in every day, what is one thing we can do in terms of our physical presence? Could be health, it could be fitness, it could be I don't know, something else, dress, I suppose. What is something we could do in terms of our work, whether it be an avocation or the vocation? And then what is one thing that day that we can do in terms of our relationships with ourselves, with, those close to us, others, and then, maybe the world in general. And those 3 ways to anchor every single day can take us towards our best and highest self. Some of the Greek words are eudaimonia and arate and so on. Brian really loves his Greek philosophy words and so on. But in today's words, it's just basically picking something each day in those 3 categories that if you just improve it +1, doesn't have to be perfect, and you just live it that day, that starts to get us towards our self-actualization. And then that means happiness. We can be happy for the sake of embodying it, not taking us to a destination.
Okay.
So what are your
what
are your thoughts, how that pops in your life?
So one of the things that I've realized over the past couple of years is that I lived most of my life looking for, hey, when I reach this, that's when I'll be happy. And in the meantime, it makes everything getting there a struggle. And I don't think we ever get to that point that we say is going to make us the happiest. I think a lot of times it's it's a vague place where we think we're going. So in the last couple of years, I've realized that it's much easier to try to enjoy the steps getting there, um, and not actually putting a value on how I have to feel with each step, and take it for the worth it gives me at that time.
Exactly. And I mean, it's just so perfectly put. So the idea is the doing, not necessarily the arriving. And think of it as doing repetitions with weights in the gym.
Mhm.
So to have enjoyment with the actual lifting and the feeling of the force resistance against the muscle, to have joy in that, not necessarily whether you have definition or big muscles or, sleek muscles, whatever the overarching goal is.
Yeah.
And so that can become part of our North Star, as I said, our soul force. And then we, just like anything we've talked about, is as we see little forks in the road where we can be making those decisions. I'm going to do this because it's consistent with a better version of myself versus this other thing I kind of habitually do, late at night when, I'm watching television or something. This is not me, but, eating ice cream or something at midnight. Then in time, that fork will open up other forks that offer other more beneficial opportunities. And it definitely has a spillover into other areas of our life.
Right.
So it sounds a little bold to call it a force, but the what I remember in history, the manifest destination of the U.S. and so on, that we had to grow and take over
Right.
territories and all that stuff. We're the human version of that. That like the seed coming up through bad soil and so on, we will continue to persevere. And everything behind the intentionality gurus is what's the hidden iceberg of things that are driving a lot of our behavior. Pay attention to it, and then maybe direct some of it. And so here we can start paying attention to those forks in the road and so on. So in daily life, it's challenging. I mean, you agree with that, don't
Oh,
you?
absolutely.
So how would one go about making those incremental but small changes?
Well, I think all are making those, um, taking those baby steps, even if we don't recognize them. Because I think so much of our regular day, we're on autopilot. But what I've been finding is that I'll be on autopilot, and then all of a sudden, something will just click, and it's like, oh, look what I accomplished. Or, oh, how can I make that different? Um, and then, you start working on that, and then you possibly go into autopilot again and don't even realize all the time what you are accomplishing. Um, and I think that's why journaling or blogging, or however you want to put those thoughts together, at the end of the day or the beginning of each day, when you reflect, it's like, you know, this is what I did. And it's like giving yourself a pat on the back.
Yeah, exactly. And the pat on the back can help release some endorphins in the brain so that when that occurs, the brain says, "Ooh, I like that."
Yeah.
And I like more of that. So it helps reinforce those beneficial things. And what I think it also does is it means that we don't have to overcome and work hard at getting rid of bad habits. We just need to follow the path for the habits that support that beneficial piece of us that feels instinctually like it is building and taking us towards that self-actualization.
Well, and it's almost like what we've been learning in the training, that I've been taking with you, is that, um, when we think of exercise, we think of it as physical exercise. But when we can start exercising our thoughts, and put them in alignment with what is important for us, I think we just become a stronger person all around, rather than um, you know, going into the gym and um, following somebody else's routine because they say, hey, this is really good for you. um, maybe there's a different routine that works for you.
Definitely, definitely. And in terms of some of the thought exercises or thought habits, again, it's so easy to fall back into old ways. And that episode that I had last week when a delivery wasn't made to me and I needed the item right away. And it's not the first time. I realized, okay, I can spend a half an hour fussing and fuming about this. It's not going to change the outcome at all, or I can use that half hour to do something more constructive. And I did not have that ability to catch myself in the past. I would fuss and fume and just be preoccupied with that stupid filler stuff that is not taking me in the direction of living my best and highest self. And it sounds so petty, but it's just an example of all of those ways that we can pick out um, where we hold ourselves back from growing towards our potential. And in my day job, I see a lot of families, with internal feuds and bad feelings and so on, and they put a lot of energy in proving their rights and looking for evidence and so on. And it's not my place to say there's another way to do things. I mean, nobody's perfect and so on, but it's just sad to see how many people are, consumed with social media, for instance. And I do have to, show my age and say I worry about the younger generations because it's so ubiquitous. It's just everywhere. There's no escaping it, it seems. And so how does someone get a sense of not being consumed by that stuff so they can listen to their thoughts and really tap into their internal soul force?
And it takes you wanting to make that change to build that strength, because it is so much easier to fall back on, well, this is the way I've always thought, this is the way it's always been, and I'm not going to change. Well, if you don't want to, you won't. And I that's how I thought for so many years of my life. Well, this is what my parents taught me. This is what I learned in school. This is what um, a certain organization has convinced me. I can't do it any differently. But the reality of it is we all can if we choose to.
Yes, and the choosing doesn't have to be large. It can just be little incremental steps.
Right.
So one of the phrases is arate from Greek philosophy, and it means excellence of any kind. And so the idea is that +1 each day, just if I just did, something that was one step in that direction, a tiny step in that direction, what might it be? And we've talked about BJ Fogg's system of the tiny steps for developing habits. So you can combine the idea behind bringing more excellence in our lives towards supporting our self-actualization, our soul force, with the tiny habits of, I'm just going to do this tiny little thing in the direction of this, maybe a physical fitness goal or a health goal, or it could be have something to do about thought habits, or it could be something in our work, and so on. And it can be a game. I mean, for me, it appeals to me when it becomes a game, but that doesn't work for everybody. Everybody can find their own center point on that. And I know you've done things along those lines. How are those push-ups going?
So the push-ups were going really well for a while. And then I'm not sure why I stopped. Then I started riding the stationary bike. And I guess yesterday when I was making my coffee, I was doing the push-ups and I thought, why haven't I been doing this for the last couple of weeks? And in the past, when I would have thought that, I would have beat myself up. It would have been like, you know, you're lazy, whatever. But it was like, oh, why haven't I done this? Because I got out of the habit.
Yeah,
And so this morning when I went down and made my coffee, I did my push-ups and I really didn't think about it till you just brought it up.
right. And sometimes those things become such, habits like brushing our teeth that it doesn't require conscious thought. I know that, with some of those that I've adopted, that I automatically turn to do the thing and think, oh, this is really interesting. Just following his concept, his habit recipe. So there's not a lot to talk about today in terms of the soul force, except, getting in touch with, we don't have to know what the destination is. We just, like a plant turning to the sun, we just have to know where the sun is and know that intuitively, where can we build in a little excellence in those three areas, in terms of our energy, be it mental or physical, and our vocation or avocation, and then our relationships with ourselves, with those closest to us, and then beyond that, the community, and then maybe the world at large. And that's all I really wanted to contribute today, kind of to re-anchor to that.
Well, I'm glad we talked about this today because here it is October, and part of me looks back and said, I couldn't wait till the summer, and I don't know where the summer went. I don't remember doing anything specifically because it was summer. And my first inclination on October 1st was to be really upset with myself that I had wasted time. But instead, I reflected back and realized I did not waste it. I just used my time differently. And so going into the fall and winter, that's how I want to move forward, is appreciating whatever it is that I accomplish as being positive.
Well, and let me just commend you on that, Karen, because I think it is a perfect example of arate, excellence, at it, in anything we do, because rather than the polluting your brain and the, stress chemicals and so on, of beating yourself up, you're moving in the direction of, okay, I'm going to be as kind to myself as I would be to somebody else, and I'm going to move on. I'm going to learn from this and move on. So that you're starting to articulate that soul force working away at you.
I love it. So we will continue our conversations on the intentionality gurus in 2 weeks. In the meantime, some of you that are listening have said that you would like to participate, but when you find out what time we record, it's like, that's not a good time for me. So what I'm going to recommend is if somebody would like to be a guest with us, recommend what time and day might be good for you. And I think Candace and I will do our best to accommodate that. Because when it's just the two of us, 8 a.m. on a Monday morning works fine, but it doesn't always work if you want to join us. So let us know. And you can find information in the show notes today. And I think that's it.
Thank you very much.
And talk to you soon. Bye-bye now.